Whilst your average mountain biker might be a little bit less concerned about the vast array of data available than your average road cyclist, there's still plenty of information on your GPS device that can help you get a lot more out of the trail. Therefore, we're going to have a look at the 5 bits of information that you will need to know to help you get the most out of your ride if you are using a GPS device. So to help teach me and you about these 5 bits of data, we've got Matt Rowe here from Rowe and King. He's the founder and head coach, and he's going to tell us all about those bits of data that are going to help you out on the tracks. So whilst most of the information that we're going to talk about today is most relevant to those on-bar GPS devices, there are also going to be some bits of information that are relevant if you're just using a smartwatch. Before we crack on with these 5 bits of data, I'd like to thank our sponsors Garmin for making today happen, and to Matt for coming all the way to Bristol. Stick around for point number 5, which is your grit and your flow score, and this is something that is specific to the mountain biker. So point number 1 has to be the route mapping screen on my device. Now if I'm out and about, there aren't road signs on the single track, so how do I know that what I'm about to hit is going to be a good single track all the way to the bottom of the hill?
Yeah, probably one of the best ways to do that is linking your Garmin to Trailforks, the app which is literally, it's like a library of the best trails around your local area. So you can tap into the Trailforks app and that's going to direct you to some of the most fun trails, and they categorise them red, blue and black, so you know the trail you're about to go along is appropriate for your skill level. But also the map's great because it just gives you a bit of perspective of where you are. You know, you're under tree cover, there's no kind of signs about. It's nice to just get a bit of perspective, my kind of north-south, where am I heading, just to get a feel of where you've been.
I guess you can always zoom out and see where the nearest little town is, find a coffee shop if you're a little bit starting to flag maybe.
Exactly, yeah. It's not just the road cyclists who love a coffee, of course.
So assuming I'm in an area that I don't really know and I'm looking at the map on my screen, is there a way I can make like a route from where I am automatically on the system?
Yeah, there is. So via Garmin Connect, the route creator, you can create a route. And on that you get live segments, and you can also connect to Strava as well. And you get these live segments which then flash up on your Garmin, tell you when the segment's about to start, so you can really give it some gas and try set a new personal record.
So point number 2 is live track. Now obviously I'm out and about on my own quite a lot for obvious reasons, and I know that my loved ones, the one of them, does sometimes worry about where I am and what I'm doing. Is there a way of communicating to them where I am, given that obviously my Garmin knows exactly where I am?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the live track feature. Again, it's a safety feature really, but also again, it's live beaming your current GPS location. So if you were to have an accident, your loved ones kind of know exactly where you are. But also, come event day, it also beams back all your live data, speed, average speed, lap splits. So from a performance perspective, your loved ones or your coaches can keep an eye on how you're getting on come race day.
Okay, that sounds cool. So do they need a specific app on their phone as well?
So yeah, so as the rider, when you're out, you need to have Garmin Connect on your mobile phone with cellular data. And your loved one back home will get an email notification when you start riding. They'll have a link into a web browser, and you'll be able to see all the data there.
So point number 3 is total ascent or total elevation. Now when I go out for a mountain bike ride, quite often I get back and I look at all my data and my distance travelled is pretty small. Which can be a little bit disheartening. But one thing I do quite like to look at is the total ascent. So how important is this as a metric for mountain bikers?
Yeah, I think you hit a nail on the head there. Climbing on a mountain bike can be really tricky. If you imagine, you're climbing up a steep, rocky climb, you're traveling slow, but you need to put out a lot of force, a lot of power, which is obviously tricky to do. So, having a view as to how much climbing you've got to go, how much elevation you've got to go in your ride will help you kind of pace your effort. But as important as a measure of how much elevation you've got, it's also a measure of how much descending you've got, because the descending is obviously tricky in mountain biking. So just knowing how much you've got left can help you just measure your effort throughout a ride.
So I guess knowing how much elevation you've got left to go down ties in nicely with point number 5, which we'll get to in a minute, which is our grit and flow scores. Point number 4 is tracking your heart rate. Now, at the start of the video, I did say that mountain bikers are maybe less data interested, but I know that adding a heart rate strap actually brings a whole wealth of really usable information to your GPS device. So what kind of information on a more basic level can we get by using a heart rate strap?
Yeah, I guess at the end of the ride, you do get a view as to how hard you've tried. So it does tell you how much time you spent in each zone, which can be handy. It also trickles into your hydration and nutrition strategy. Now, this is a smart way, so Garmin will be able to tell by your heart rate how hard you've worked and how much food you should be taking on board and how much carbs. It's going to help you kind of fuel for your bike rides. But as well, just keeping an eye on your heart rate is really important, because when you go an upper climb, your heart rate obviously spikes. It's a very tough effort, but for the downhills, you want to be nice and relaxed and focused. So you want to drop your heart rate so you can focus on the technical aspects of the mountain bike descent. A bit like cross-country skiing. When the skiers come in for the chute, it's all about getting your heart rate down. It's that kind of concept with mountain biking as well.
So if I am a little bit interested in training, obviously power meters are pretty expensive. Heart rate straps though, usually about 30 quid or so. So are they an effective training tool if you don't want to splash loads of cash on power?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heart rate monitors have been widely available and very affordable since the 80s. Power meters, really, it's only in the last 10 years or so they've been affordable and available to the masses. Heart rate monitor, you can train very effectively too, using your heart rate data. You can make sure you're training in the right zones or the right intensities for your target event. So yeah, definitely possible with a heart rate monitor for £30, as you say.
So point number 5 is the grit and the flow score. Now these are Garmin specific features, and this usually pops up at the end of my ride. So first off, what is the grit score?
So the grit score is a measure of how hard a ride has been. So your grit score only ever increases through the ride. So if you do some really bumpy, rocky sections, you'll see a little spike in your grit score. And with duration of the ride as well, a long ride will rack up grit score. So if you get a grit score of between 0 and 20, that's kind of a pretty easy ride. 20 to 40 is kind of like a moderate ride. You can get grit scores up towards 100 if you're doing a long, challenging ride. And it's the accelerometer within the Garmin device. That's the bit of technology that gives you this data.
Okay, so when I come back from a ride and feel real beaten up, it might be because my grit score's been up towards 50, 60, 70, something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's like on the road, we use kind of TSS, your training stress score. This is the mountain bike equivalent. It's your grit score.
Okay, so the flow score sounds a little bit nicer. And is it linked to that little beep I get when I do a jump as well?
Yeah, kind of. The flow score is a measure of your momentum and your smoothness for a given section. And this is where the lap functionality really comes in. So if you kind of section a trail, you keep riding around that one trail, you can get a flow score for that one section repeatedly. So the lower the score, the smoother you are. So if you're getting a flow score of over 20, that's a very rough trail and there's perhaps not too much momentum going on. Whereas the lower the score, the smoother, the more momentum you've had down that trail. So it's all about comparing like for like. It's tricky to compare your kind of performance across two different trails. It's more about on one trail, how have you performed, which ride was smoother, and allows you to do a bit of kind of self-analysis. What did I do differently this time? How did I approach it? What led to me being smoother? And with smoothness in mountain biking, as you know, normally comes speed. So the smoother, the more controlled you are, the faster you can go down trails.
So it's more of a technique analysis rather than a fitness analysis type
Absolutely,
thing.
yeah.
So I do get that little beep when I'm jumping, and often my GPS says, "Great jump, Tom," or something like that. And usually it's actually not very far or not for very long. So what's the point in telling me this?
Yeah, so this is your hang time. So it tells you, your Garmin will tell you how long you spent in the air in time, normally fractions of a second, and the distance you traveled in the air as well. And this is great because if you are trying to become a little bit better at jumping in the air, and you do section a few little jumps, you can kind of do those jumps repeatedly and see what technique is leading you to a greater hang time. You know, with more time in the air, traveling further distance. It's a nice way to accurately measure how well you're jumping.
And where can I find all this data?
So if you're on the mountain bike profile on a Garmin for a ride, it will automatically flag up your jumps as you're doing them. So you get a little notification saying that jump just then, how long you spent in the air and the distance you traveled. And at the end of your ride, in the ride summary, you can kind of scroll down under jumps, and it'll have all the jumps. And it's amazing how many jumps sometimes you do fit into a ride. And you can get up to over 100 jumps if you are quite hoppy and do make the most of those little route features and stuff.
So it turns out there is more to the Garmin than just sort of training data that the roadies might love. Us mountain bikers can find plenty of relevant information to help us with our riding skills, with our fitness, and also for making sure we hit the best bits of single track in a local area. So thanks very much, Matt, for coming down to Bristol. It's really appreciated. And of course, thank you to Garmin, our sponsors. Let us know in the comments what data fields you have on your GPS device. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell icon so that every time we upload a new video, you get a notification.